We inhabit a world that values quick reactions. The faster we reply, the more confident we seem. The louder we are, the more in control we appear. Yet there exists a quiet strength that is often misunderstood, overlooked, and even ridiculed. This is not the silence of submission or fear, but the silence of restraint. It comes from knowing who you are and not needing every moment to prove it. There is something deeply powerful about not responding to disrespect, not because you didn't notice it or it didn't hurt, but because you choose to rise above it. It's easy to shout back, to post a clever reply, or to return an insult. That's the natural human reaction. But true leadership demands more. It asks us to be intentional, to pause, to resist the urge to win the moment, and instead win our integrity. I once heard a story, perhaps you have too, about a monk who traveled barefoot from village to village, teaching peace, humility, and kindness. One day, as he walked through a town square, a man shouted insults at him, calling him a fraud, a beggar, and a waste of time. The monk said nothing. He looked at the man, smiled, and kept walking. Later, a follower asked him, "Master, why didn't you say anything? He disrespected you in front of everyone." The monk replied, "If someone offers you a gift and you refuse to take it, to whom does the gift belong?" That is the power of silence. It doesn't deny the moment, it simply refuses to be defined by it. When we stay quiet after being disrespected, we're not pretending we weren't hurt or ignoring the pain. We're choosing not to let that moment decide who we are. We're saying, "I know what you did, but I also know who I am." It's not weakness, it's wisdom. Wisdom isn't loud. It doesn't interrupt or dominate the room. Wisdom listens more than it speaks, watches, and takes the long view. When it does speak, people listen because they've learned that silence, when chosen deliberately, carries a weight that noise never can. We're conditioned to believe that if we don't respond, we're giving someone else the upper hand. But in truth, we're giving ourselves the upper heart. We're preserving our dignity, protecting our peace, and building inner strength that doesn't depend on applause, validation, or revenge. Think about the people you respect most. They carry themselves with grace, even under fire. They don't always have the last word, but always seem to have the right one. They don't let a moment of insult rob them of a lifetime of integrity. Those are the people we want to follow, not because they win every argument, but because they don't need to. This doesn't mean we let others walk over us or accept toxic behavior. Silence isn't the absence of boundaries, it's the assertion of control. When we choose silence, we're not surrendering, we're strategizing. We're saying, "You don't get to pull me into the mud just because you live there." We're playing the long game. The truth is, anyone can speak, but not everyone can listen. Even fewer can choose silence when their pride is wounded. That's rare, valuable, and true leadership. Because the moment we give in to the noise, we become part of it, and nothing good grows in chaos. One of the most remarkable leaders I've ever known once told me, "Never waste your breath on someone who's not ready to hear you." That line has stayed with me because it reminds us that timing matters, maturity matters, and silence isn't the end of the conversation. It's just choosing not to have it on their terms. If someone disrespects you and you react immediately, you give them control. But when you pause, when you choose not to retaliate, you reclaim your power. You tell the world, "I am not reactive, I am intentional. I am not here to fight for attention, I am here to lead with purpose." This kind of mindset isn't built overnight. It takes work, pain, and moments where everything in you wants to shout back and you don't. It's where you walk away from an insult, not because it didn't matter, but because it wasn't worth your peace. That's the kind of character that leaves a legacy. When you meet someone who can stay calm in the face of disrespect, you're looking at someone who's done the work, the inner work that doesn't show up on resumes, but always shows up in moments that matter. That work is rooted in a simple truth. We don't need to fight every battle or attend every argument we're invited to. Silence isn't cowardice, it's discipline. So the next time someone disrespects you, ask yourself, who do I want to be right now? The one who reacts or the one who responds with purpose? The one who lets them dictate the story, or the one who rewrites it by simply walking away? Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Disrespect stings, there's no denying that. When someone belittles you, mocks you, or tries to make you feel small, it hits something deeply personal. Our natural reaction is often to wonder, what did I do? Why me? We internalize it, turning it over in our heads, replaying the moment, dissecting every word, tone, and expression. But what if I told you that the disrespect wasn't about you at all? When someone disrespects you, they are not defining you, they are revealing themselves. That's a hard truth to grasp because our instincts push us to take it personally. We assume their words are a reflection of our worth, but in reality, people often project what they carry, their bitterness, insecurity, frustration. It leaks out and sometimes lands on us. But just because it lands on us doesn't mean it belongs to us. Think about the last time someone said something cruel or dismissive to you. Maybe it came out of nowhere, or perhaps it was someone you respected, someone you didn't expect it from. In either case, ask yourself, what kind of person does it take to speak down to someone they don't truly know? What kind of internal state are they living in where tearing others down feels easier than lifting themselves up? Disrespect is like a flare. It lights up what's going on beneath the surface of the person who sends it out. It reveals their wounds, their fear of being seen as small, their need to control, their lack of emotional maturity. People who are at peace with themselves rarely feel the need to provoke conflict. People who are secure don't belittle others to feel tall. So, when we're on the receiving end of disrespect, instead of spiraling into self-doubt, we need to shift our perspective. This isn't about ego, it's about empathy. That doesn't mean we excuse bad behavior or tolerate abuse, but it does mean we learn to see the bigger picture. This behavior is a reflection of them, not me. The leader who yells in meetings isn't powerful, he's insecure. The colleague who cuts you down in front of others isn't confident, she's threatened. The friend who disappears when you need them most isn't cold-hearted, they're overwhelmed by their own limits. And when we begin to see these patterns for what they are, we stop taking things so personally and start leading ourselves differently. We begin to understand that not every battle is ours to fight, and not every jab deserves a counterpunch. Sometimes, the most insightful thing you can do is observe someone's behavior and recognize, this is not about me. That recognition doesn't make the pain go away immediately, but it gives us something much more valuable than momentary relief. It gives us clarity. And with clarity comes freedom. Imagine someone throwing mud at you. Your first reaction might be anger. You might want to throw it right back. But if you pause, if you really look at them, you might realize something. They're covered in it. They've been walking through it for a long time. Maybe that mud is all they know. In some way, their behavior is their way of saying, this is what I carry. That doesn't make it right, but it does explain it. And sometimes, understanding is more useful than retaliation. The challenge is, this kind of mindset requires inner work. It asks us to stop centering ourselves in every story, which is hard, especially when we feel hurt. But it's also where real leadership begins. When we see through someone's behavior and meet it not with pride but with perspective, we don't enter with anger, we enter with awareness. We don't escalate, we inquire. We ask, what's really going on here? Why would a person choose this behavior? Not to excuse them, but to understand what energy we're really dealing with. That kind of approach allows us to lead with emotional intelligence instead of emotional reaction. It's easy to assume that loud people are strong, that sharp tongues belong to sharp minds. But often, the loudest people are the ones most desperate to be heard. Sometimes, the only way they know how to speak is through disrespect because they haven't yet learned the language of vulnerability. When you understand this, you become unshakable. You start to carry yourself differently because you realize that your self-worth isn't something others can touch. It's something you carry quietly, confidently. And the more you grow, the more you'll see that people's reactions to you say more about where they are in their journey than where you are in yours.
It's humbling, really, because we've all been on both sides. We've all had moments when we reacted out of fear, stress, or insecurity. Maybe we didn't mean to hurt someone, but we did. That's the human condition. We're imperfect. And understanding that makes us slower to judge, quicker to forgive. It doesn't mean we let things slide, but it does mean we choose to be better than what we face.
So, the next time someone disrespects you, take a breath, don't react, reflect. Remind yourself that this is not a reflection of your value, it's a reflection of their state. And from that place of calm, you'll find the strength not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. You don't need to respond to every insult or chase every slight. Let them reveal who they are while you stay true to who you are. Because in the end, your character isn't shown in how loudly you speak, it's revealed in how deeply you understand. And that kind of strength doesn't shout, it simply stands. Silence has a way of making people uncomfortable. We're so conditioned to fill every pause, to rush into explanations, to defend ourselves quickly, as if the absence of words somehow implies weakness, guilt, or uncertainty. But silence isn't a void. It's not the absence of communication. It's the most deliberate form of it. When someone disrespects us, the pressure to respond is immediate. We feel it in our chest. Our mind races with comebacks. We want to correct the narrative, defend our honor, and prove that we're not what they think we are. But in doing so, we often jump into a space that isn't even ours to fix. Silence, when chosen intentionally, is not passive. It's active and powerful. It says, I will not participate in this moment on your terms. It creates distance, and in that distance, people are forced to sit with what they've said, what they've done, and who they are. That's where the truth begins to echo. Think of a musician tuning an instrument. They don't tune it while everyone's shouting, they find the note in quiet. They listen closely, because sound without space is just noise. The same is true with people. You can't always hear the truth in the middle of chaos, but when things go quiet, when the dust settles, that's when you start to see clearly. That's when people hear the weight of their own words. I once worked with a leader who was calm to the point of unnerving. In meetings, when tensions rose, he never raised his voice. When someone crossed the line, he didn't fight fire with fire. He simply paused, looked at them, and said nothing, sometimes for 10 seconds, sometimes longer. That silence was deafening because in that space, people heard themselves more clearly than they'd ever heard him. The point was made without being spoken. That kind of leadership is rare. It takes patience, discipline, and a willingness to be misunderstood temporarily for the sake of being respected permanently. Silence doesn't mean we don't care or that we're okay with being disrespected. It means we're choosing to respond with purpose rather than emotion. We're choosing to give the moment what it needs, not what it demands. Often, what it needs is space. In space, people reveal themselves. When you don't interrupt someone's behavior, when you let them keep going, they eventually show you exactly who they are, not because you pushed them, but because you didn't. You stepped back. You gave them the room to be real, to unravel, to expose their own motives. Silence holds up a mirror. We're so quick to manage other people's reactions, to correct our misunderstandings, to protect our image. But what if we trusted that the truth has its own voice? What if we believed that the people who matter will see through the noise, that we don't have to explain ourselves every time we're misunderstood? Sometimes the loudest clarity comes not from speaking, but from staying still. And it's not easy. There will be moments when you'll feel the pull to jump in, to say something clever, to make them feel what you felt. But what you'll find is that silence often says it more effectively, because words can be twisted, but silence forces people to sit with their own echo. This is especially true when someone expects a reaction. People who provoke often want control. They want to throw you off balance, to make you play the game. And when you don't give them what they're fishing for, that silence becomes a wall they can't climb. It frustrates them, sure, but more importantly, it protects you. It protects your peace, your values, your clarity, and sometimes it helps them too. There's something deeply reflective about silence. When someone speaks out of line and hears nothing in return, they're left alone with their own voice.
They replay what they said, they begin to question, not always right away, but eventually, because we all have that internal compass that senses when we've gone too far. Silence gives it a chance to be heard. And I've seen people apologize, not because they were told to, but because the quiet afterward gave them space to feel the weight of their actions. That space is a gift, not just to ourselves, but to them. It's a reminder that accountability isn't always imposed. Sometimes it emerges on its own, but only when we don't rush to fill the silence with noise. This is especially important in leadership. The best leaders don't just know when to speak, they know when not to. They know that silence can diffuse tension, de-escalate drama, reset the tone, invite introspection, and send a message louder than any reprimand. I am not here to react. I am here to lead. We don't have to respond to every opinion, insult, or assumption. We don't have to justify our worth to people who can't see it. When we choose silence, we choose ourselves. We choose to let truth speak, not through our defense, but through our presence. It's not about winning the argument, it's about winning your peace. So the next time you're disrespected and everything in you wants to react, pause, breathe, and say nothing. Not because you have nothing to say, but because what you stand for is greater than what they said. Because sometimes the most honest reply is no reply at all. Silence is not empty. It's full of clarity, restraint, and truth waiting to rise. Who we are isn't revealed in the moments when everything goes our way. It's not defined by applause, recognition, or compliments. Who we are is forged in moments of tension, when things are unfair, when we're judged, overlooked, or disrespected. Those are the moments that test us and, more importantly, define us. Disrespect is something we'll all face. Sometimes it's blatant, sometimes subtle, sometimes it comes from strangers, and sometimes, painfully, it comes from people we love. But regardless of where it comes from, we always have a choice in how we respond. And that choice, that's where our identity lives. Silence is not empty. It's full of clarity, restraint, and truth waiting to rise. Who we are isn't revealed in the moments when everything goes our way. It's not defined by applause, recognition, or compliments. Who we are is forged in moments of tension, when things are unfair, when we're judged, overlooked, or disrespected. Those are the moments that test us and, more importantly, define us. Disrespect is something we'll all face. Sometimes it's blatant, sometimes subtle, sometimes it comes from strangers, and sometimes, painfully, it comes from people we love. But regardless of where it comes from, we always have a choice in how we respond. And that choice, that's where our identity lives.
It's not the disrespect that defines you. It's what you do after. We live in a world obsessed with image, with proving, with making sure everyone knows we're right, that we're strong, that we won't be walked on. So when someone disrespects us, our instinct is to react in a way that protects our pride. We fight fire with fire, come back with a sharper word, a stronger tone. We want to win the moment. But here's the question we don't ask enough. What are we really winning? Because if we sacrifice our character for the sake of a comeback, have we actually gained anything? The truth is, your response to disrespect doesn't just affect how others see you, it shapes how you see yourself. And if we're not careful, we can start becoming the very thing we're trying to rise above. The most powerful people I know are not the ones who dominate every conversation or crush every insult. The most powerful people I know are the ones who know exactly who they are and don't feel the need to prove it every time they're challenged. They respond to disrespect not with retaliation, but with restraint. They understand something most people miss. Your reaction is your reputation. You teach people how to treat you, not just by what you allow, but by how you respond. And that doesn't mean being passive or silent all the time. It means choosing your response deliberately, not emotionally. It means making sure your behavior aligns with your values, not with their behavior. I remember a conversation I had with a mentor years ago. I was venting about a situation where someone had clearly crossed a line with me. I felt justified in wanting to put them in their place, to show them I wasn't to be messed with. But this mentor asked me a question I'll never forget. He said, "Do you want to be right or do you want to be respected?"
At first, I didn't understand. Aren't those the same thing? But they're not. Being right is about the moment. Being respected is about the long run. Being right satisfies your ego. Being respected shapes your legacy. Every time you respond to disrespect, you're writing a story about who you are. You're telling people and yourself, this is how I handle pressure. This is how I treat others, even when they don't treat me well. This is who I am when it's hard to be me. And that story, that's your identity. It's easy to justify a harsh reaction, to say they started it or they had it coming. But real leadership asks more of us. It asks us to lead ourselves before we try to lead others. It asks us to take the high road, not because it's easy, but because it's right. Because our values don't mean anything if we've abandoned them when they're tested. It's in the hardest moments that we build the strongest character. And character isn't built through comfort. It's built through choice, through deciding again and again, I won't let someone else's actions turn me into something I'm not proud of. There's something incredibly dignified about responding to disrespect with grace. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to know you don't need to match their energy to prove your worth. You're not there to win the argument, you're there to win your integrity.
Think of a lighthouse. It doesn't shout at the storm or chase the waves. It stands firm, consistent, sending its signal out into the chaos, not to fight the sea, but to guide those lost in it. That's who you can be, a steady presence, a reminder that strength and stillness can coexist. Sometimes people will see your calm and mistake it for surrender. Let them. You don't need everyone to understand you. You just need to understand yourself. And when your response is rooted in who you are, not in what they did, you walk away with something no insult can take away: self-respect. There will be moments where your silence or calm response won't be appreciated, where it feels like letting them off the hook. But it's not about them. It's about you. It's about choosing to be better instead of bitter, honoring your own path, even when someone else tries to pull you off it. And yes, you'll be tempted. There will be words you want to say, moments you want to reclaim. But in those moments, ask yourself, who do I want to be remembered as? Someone who lost control every time they were tested, or someone who led themselves with grace, even when others didn't deserve it? Every response you give is a step toward the person you're becoming. Make those steps count. Let your actions be louder than your emotions. Let your character outlast the conflict, because at the end of the day, their disrespect is temporary, but your identity, that's for life. In a world that celebrates volume, speed, and bold declaration, staying quiet is often misunderstood. People associate quiet with retreat. They think if you're not responding, you're scared. If you're not arguing, you've lost. If you're not clapping back, you don't care. But what they don't realize is that the quietest people in the room are often the ones thinking the most, observing the most, learning the most, and most importantly, leading in the moment. When someone disrespects you, the expectation is an immediate reaction. The unwritten rule says you better defend yourself, you better clap back, you better make sure they know who they're dealing with. But let's pause and consider this. What if wisdom doesn't look like proving a point? What if it looks like holding your ground, not by shouting, but by standing still? Because quiet is not weak. Quiet is clarity, presence. It is the space where real understanding begins to form. Anyone can react, anyone can raise their voice, but it takes strength to resist that first wave of emotion, maturity to see beyond the insult and ask yourself, what actually needs to be said here, if anything at all? The people we truly admire in life, the ones we call wise, grounded, unshakable, are not known for how quickly they responded to conflict. They're known for how thoughtfully they did, how they didn't let disrespect lure them into behavior that went against who they were. They showed us that sometimes the smartest move is no move at all, not because they were afraid, but because they were focused on the long game.
There's a difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is emotional, quick, impulsive, and often driven by ego. Response is measured, intentional, and comes from a place of purpose, not pride.
Sometimes the wisest response is silence, because silence leaves room for reflection, growth, truth to catch up with noise. I've seen leaders sit in silence after being spoken to with disrespect, not because they didn't have a rebuttal, but because they understood something powerful. Not everything needs to be answered. Some comments answer themselves, some behaviors are their own punishment, and sometimes saying nothing isn't surrender, it's self-control. In fact, the people who stay quiet after being disrespected aren't suppressing their feelings, they're managing them. They're saying, I see what's happening, I know how I feel, and I'm choosing not to let this moment shape me into someone I'm not. That's wisdom. That's the kind of emotional intelligence that changes teams, families, cultures. The truth is, anyone can escalate a situation. That's easy. What's rare is someone who can de-escalate it, who can absorb the tension and not pass it on, who can stay calm, not because they're numb, but because they're anchored. And the beauty of wisdom is that it's not loud. It doesn't announce itself or seek validation. It just is, like a deep-rooted tree in a storm. It doesn't need to shout to prove it's strong. It stands, holds, waits for the storm to pass. And when it does, it's still there, calm, steady, unchanged. Think of a time you responded emotionally to a slight. You probably replayed it later and thought, I wish I'd handled that differently. Now, think of a time you stayed calm, when you took a breath, gave space, chose quiet. You probably remember that moment not with regret, but with pace, because you didn't abandon yourself in the name of being right. You stayed rooted. Wisdom doesn't always win applause in the moment. It's not flashy. But over time, it wins trust, respect, and builds something lasting: character. This isn't about avoiding confrontation. Sometimes speaking up is necessary. But there's a difference between speaking up with purpose and speaking out of pride. When your voice comes from wisdom, it doesn't tear down, it builds up. It doesn't defend ego, it defends integrity. The quiet response allows room for that discernment. It creates space between stimulus and response, between feeling and action. And in that space is where leadership lives. The problem is, many people mistake silence for surrender, but that's because they've never seen what real restraint looks like. They've never seen someone choose their values over validation. But you have the opportunity to be that example, to show others and yourself that the most powerful people in the room aren't the ones who speak the most, but the ones who speak with intention. So the next time someone crosses a line, take a breath. Don't rush to fill the space with words. Don't feel the need to match their energy. Ask yourself, what do I want to walk away from this with? An argument or my dignity intact? Because that's the real victory. It's not proving them wrong. It's proving to yourself that you're not controlled by other people's chaos, that your behavior is anchored in who you are, not what they did. And with each quiet response, you reinforce that identity. You build credibility, not just with others, but with yourself. You start to trust your own strength. You learn that wisdom isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing what's worth your energy. Quiet doesn't mean you didn't feel the pain. It means you chose not to pass it on. It means you chose healing over retaliation, presence over pride, wisdom over noise. And that choice, that's not weakness.